Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 194 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as always though by the infamous, the elusive Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joe. Yourself?
Very good, my friend, very good. Right, I don't believe this show will be, will be very long in terms of the length and stuff. I don't think there's too much to go over, really. We're going to start, obviously, though, with the review part. We're going to start at the Allianz Cloud in Milan, Italy. Obviously, a Match from Italy show. It was on the Friday night. One or two fights to mention. Firstly, friend of the show, former world champion Jamie McDonnell. It's his first fight back since losing to Inoue in a round. He picked up his 30th career win, now 30-3 with one draw. It was a unanimous decision over 6 rounds against the very tough journeyman Christian Nevaez, who's now 15-16 with 4 draws. I think he'd only been stopped the one time. And topping the bill, Francesco Patera, 21-3. He successfully defended his EBU European lightweight title against Paul Hyland Jr., 20-1 going in now, 20-2. Obviously, it took Ritson, I think it was 1 or 2 rounds to get rid of him. I think it was 1 round. And we kind of said Patera beating Ritson. You'd have to kind of look at that and say he's the favourite. He was actually able to get Hyland Jr. out of there after 6 rounds. So it's a TKO there for Patera. Paul Hyland Jr. really did give it a go, though. I'd like to see him take on Sean Mashadod, perhaps, if Mashadod's still fighting. Moving out now to York Hall in Bethnal Green, London, United Kingdom, a card that I was actually there for. I want to start on the undercard with CR Ozgul, actually. A guy that, like I say, got knocked out by Mikey Saki. Mikey Saki was 5-2. It was for the Southern Area title. That was way back, though. And obviously, since losing at Southern Area level, being knocked out, Ozgul, I think he was 14-0. He got in there with, I think it was Victor Postel, and then he got in there with someone else, and then he got in there last week with Anthony Yigit. So obviously it was tough matchmaking once again for Ozgul. He's got a big set of balls, he really does, and he lost on points after 8 rounds. Yigit now 24-1 with 1 draw, Ozgul 15-4. But I've got to say, Ozgul's a tough guy, man. He was giving it his all. I've got to say, Yigit didn't win, super easily. I mean, he won clearly, but he was having to really work. It wasn't an easy night's work there at the York Hall. Also on the bill, Daniel Egbunike, I think his name said. He's now 5-0. It was a points win after 10 rounds against Martin McDonough, who was 5-0. Both men were undefeated, putting their O's on the line. Martin McDonough actually hadn't lost a round as a professional, but he was, he lost the fight here, so he lost a few rounds, and I think the right man did win. He seemed to just want to always kind of force the fight. Egbunike, I think they call him DK, I think they call him. But anyway, he was pretty good. He was trying to force the fight. Martin McDonough had great feet, the way he glided around the ring, but he just wasn't throwing enough shots. And sometimes he would throw a brilliant shot, and you just thought, wow, he's got so much potential. He needs to, do that a little bit more often. He was finding some fantastic shots, but they were so few and far between. Like I say, the right man won there on points over 10 rounds. Also on the bill, Ryan Walsh, 23-2 with 2 draws. He took on Lewis Paulin, 12-0. It was for Walsh's British Featherweight title. It ended up in a split decision over 12 rounds in favour of Walsh. It was a very, very close fight, actually. I felt like Paulin really announced himself on that British scene. A lot of people will be trying to stay away from him now because he had a real shout of actually winning it. He was brilliant, actually, Lewis Paulin. He's really gained a fan in me there. And also on the bill, O'Hara Davies very questionably picked up a win here, now 19-2. It was a points win over 10 rounds against Miguel Vasquez, 41-8 now. His team were fuming. They were cussing in Spanish after the bout, and rightly so, to be honest. Even O'Hara Davies himself actually shook his head at the decision from the referee. The referee was... who was that referee? Ian John Lewis, that was it. So he was actually the guy refereeing and judging the fight. You'd probably have to say if it was 3 judges, it would have been a unanimous decision, you'd have thought. It definitely wouldn't have been in favour of O'Hara Davies. Even himself, like I say, even he wasn't pleased with the outcome. It was a clear win for Miguel Vasquez, and he just didn't get it. So it's a shame, because if it was actually for a belt, they could probably moan to a sanctioning body and they'd get involved and have another look at it and stuff like that. But I'm not quite sure he can do anything. So it's very, very bad luck there for Miguel Vasquez. We did go to the predictions, if I'm not mistaken, on that. And I went with Davies on points, Ayaz. So did you. The listeners actually believed that Davies would get the knockout. That didn't happen. So by hook or by crook, we managed to gain a point there. Moving out now to the Pechanga Resort and Casino in California, USA. Over here, let's start with the undercard. Junior Farr, 17-0 going in. Obviously, I think he's from New Zealand. He fought and beat Joseph Parker in the amateurs. He took on the wily veteran Dominic Gwynn, 37-12 with 1 draw. He actually had Farr down in the 4th round, Gwynn, but he managed to get up Junior Farr and win unanimously over 10 rounds. Also on the bill, Carlos Adames. He picked up win number 18. It was for the NABF Super Welterweight title and also the WBO NABO Super Welterweight title. In the other corner, Patrick Day, 17-3 now with 1 draw. Like I say, Adames 18-0, completely undefeated. A unanimous decision there over 10 rounds. He's got a brilliantly bright future, Adames. And topping the bill, Richard Comey, 28-2. He took on Raymundo Beltran, 36-8 with 1 draw. Friend of the show. It was for the IBF World Lightweight title. Obviously, Beltran actually fouled the weight, so the belt wasn't on the line for him, unfortunately. He came over, I think it was almost 2 pounds over the limit. Beltran was actually down on the canvas twice in the first round, and he seemed to come back into it, actually. He seemed to have, I wouldn't say have Comey in trouble as such, but he seemed to really have great moments where he seemed to hurt him a few times, Comey. And it was credit to Beltran, like I say, because he is a guy that, honestly, he's past his best, but he's still able to mix it with these type of fighters. Like I said on last week's show, I felt like Comey was getting Beltran at the right time. I actually predicted the knockout, and that is what happened. Beltran was down in the 5th round also, I should mention, and then, like I say, he was down in the 8th round. Not all the knockdowns were heavy knockdowns, but the referee had seen enough after the 8th round knockdown, so I gain a point there for getting the Comey knockout right, unfortunately. And as you went with Beltran on points, the listeners actually agreed with me, Comey by knockout, so we gain a point there. But yeah, gutted really for Raymundo Beltran, really gutted for him, but a good win there for Richard Comey. Obviously a big threat there at lightweight. Moving out now to the Sam's Town Hotel and Gambling Hall in Las Vegas, Nevada. 1 or 2 fights to mention, just the one. Cameron Crowe, I believe I think it's a Mayweather fighter, but his record's 16-13 with 3 draws. But anyway, he got in there against Keith Hunter. That's, of course, the brother of heavyweight Michael Hunter. Keith Hunter now 11-0. He was able to win unanimously over 10 rounds there. That's another fight on a Mayweather card. He's managed to win, I believe, a couple in a row now. Moving out now, though, to the Foxwoods Resort in Mashantucket, Connecticut, USA. 1 fight to mention on this bill. Former world champion Chad Dawson, he picked up win number 35 in what was his 40th fight. He's got the 5 losses. It was a unanimous decision over 8 rounds against Quinton Rankin, who was 15-5 now, 15-6 with 2 draws. But Rankin actually had Dawson down in the fight, which is a bit worrying there, to be honest. Moving out now to the NRG Arena in Houston, Texas, USA. We're going to start here with the undercard. Erickson Lubin was able to knock out in 4 rounds Zakaria Atu. Lubin now 21-1. And topping the bill, Jamal Charlo 29-0 now. It was a unanimous decision against Brandon Adams, 21-2. It was for the WBC World Middleweight title. A defense there for Charlo. I was actually very surprised by this fight. Charlo was getting hit way too often. It was very, very close, actually. The rounds. I'm not saying that he dropped loads of rounds. I'm just saying it was very competitive. It was way too competitive for my liking. I wasn't that impressed with Charlo, and the size difference between the pair was just unbelievable. I expected him to knock out Adams. I think I said it on last week's show. He would definitely knock him out within 4 rounds. I may have even said 3 rounds. Because that guy got knocked out, I think it was in 2 rounds by John Thompson, who Liam Smith knocked out. So that did not look good. But anyway, he was able to carry Jamal Charlo the distance. So like I say, that is not a statement at all in my eyes. And moving out now to the final bill at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island, USA. I'm going to throw it over to you here, Ayaz. Cal Yafai 26-0, a unanimous decision over 12 rounds against Norberto Jimenez. Now 29-9 with 4 draws. It was a defense of Yafai's WBA World Super Flyweight title. Another fight, really, Ayaz, what was, I hate to say it because he's a friend of the show, Cal Yafai, but a little bit boring.
Yes, it's a little bit boring, obviously. There's another Cal Yafai win, obviously. I mean, his opponent was really a nobody, to be fair. But, I mean, you can't really do much, obviously. At the end, he's Britain's longest champion. I mean, to be fair, he needs a big fight. He needs someone like
Charlie Edwards.
Estrada, Charlie Edwards, Estrada, Chocolito. I mean, he's fought all these like nobodies. He needs a big fight now, I think. Obviously, let's just see how he steps up.
Yeah, I do really want to see that Charlie Edwards fight. I feel like he's had a few of these lackluster performances, Cal Yafai, and I think a big fight with Charlie Edwards, especially because it's an all-British thing, but I feel like he would get good money and we'd all be interested. It's just a fight where if he was to win it, that would kind of catapult him a little bit higher up in that in that world title kind of level. I feel like he would have a brilliant career. If he beats Charlie Edwards, then he certainly gets my check mark, if you like. He's already got my check mark, but a fight against Charlie Edwards, that's got a bit of real beef. It's been brewing for a while now. Let's just make it happen. They're both going to get career high paydays. Why not? I mean, Charlie Edwards wants it. Let's see. Joseph Parker managed to pick up win number 26. He's got those 2 losses. It was actually a TKO in the 10th round against Alex Leapai. I couldn't believe it went as far as the 10th round. It wasn't a great card, in all honesty, the whole bill here in Rhode Island. Leapai, I mean, he was taking big shots, real spiteful shots from Joseph Parker. And I thought the old guy Leapai, 39 I believe he was, in the ring on Saturday night, I couldn't believe he was taking the shots. I mean, Parker was ripping to the body, to the head. He was finding him with monstrous looking uppercuts. It was real spiteful, but he managed to go 10 rounds, and it was the referee that jumped in, actually, and Leapai was protesting straight away. He wasn't happy about it. It was one of those fights that kind of does take time off your career and stuff like that, even possibly your life, really, because it was just completely one-sided. Parker won every single round, but Leapai wasn't going to go anywhere, and that was quite surprising because I thought Parker would probably take him out within a few rounds. But yeah, 10th round TKO there. Alex Leapai 32-8 with 4 draws. Joseph Parker 26-2, and topping the bill, Demetrius Andrade now 28-0. It was a defense of his WBO World Middleweight title against Matthysse Selecki, now 28-2. Andrade, at the very start, when he was able to put Selecki down in the first round, I thought, whoa. I mean, he's telling the truth. We had him on last week's show. He said to me, I want to be the first man to stop him. He's been down against Rosado. He's been down against Daniel Jacobs. I think he'd been down against somebody else. I want to be the man to actually stop him. And I really believed him in that first round. I was thinking, who is this guy and what has he done with Demetrius Andrade? Why is he being so aggressive? And, he just seemed to kind of lay off him, and he was happy to just beat him on points, it seemed, after that first round. I mean, he had a few good rounds after that. He was again in full control. I think someone said, it was a great statistic, I think someone said that he has not let his opponent land double figures. So that's literally under 10 shots have been landed on him in every single round for something like the last 48 rounds that he's done. That's incredible. That is incredible. He does bring something that, that some of the other fighters don't have in terms of the guys that want to fight Triple G and Canelo and stuff like that. I do want to see those fights happen. I'd like to see him fight Triple G, actually. But I feel like those type of guys would bring the best out of him. This wasn't a statement made. It was a bit of a boring fight, like I say. But he looked great in parts of it. But some of the other parts, he was just happy to coast. And unfortunately, that's not what the fans like. And before he signed with Eddie Hearn, he was very, very inactive. And with performances like that, you kind of understand perhaps why. But again, I take nothing away from Andrade. He is one of my real favourite fighters. I think he's one of the very best in the world. So I'd love to see him in these big fights. But please, not another Selecki, not another Calton Dokwa. We want to see the big names. We'd like to see the Billy Joe fight, even though I think Billy Joe himself is to blame for that fight not happening, but it is what it is. Any words on Andrade Ayaz just before we wrap it up?
I mean, to be fair, he just needs a big fight. That's what I mean. Both him and Cowyer fight both need big fights, and that's what it is.
Yeah, and Joseph Parker. I think all three of the main attractions on that card in Providence all need big names to fight. So, yeah, it wasn't a bad card in terms of the names. I was looking forward to it, but the action just wasn't great. And it's perhaps because all three of those guys may have been a little bit unmotivated for those opponents. I don't know. I'm just throwing a lifeline in there. But that is about everything for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part one, the last thing to do is to welcome our very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2016 Olympic silver medalist and the undefeated featherweight world contender. It is, of course, Mr. Shakur Stevenson. Shakur, welcome back on the show.
What's up? What's good?
What's up? Shakur, we last spoke, like I say, back in January. It was just after that win over Jesse Rosales. Obviously, you fought once again in April against former world title challenger Christopher Diaz. You pretty much shut him out, really, over 10 rounds. Please talk us through that fight briefly.
I guess that was a fight where everybody said I was taking it too early, and a lot of people thought that he was going to beat me. I don't know why they would think that, but I went in there and I whitewashed him. It was an easy fight. I think I won every round. If I ain't won every round, I probably lost one round. I didn't even think I lost one round. But it was an easy fight, so.
And Shakur, beating a guy like Diaz, I mean, obviously he'd only lost the one fight to Masayuki Ito, a world champion. Does that kind of give you a little bit more reassurance that you are at that top level this early on in your pro career, or perhaps not?
Nah, I already knew that. I told you I've been in the ring with Lomachenko, Crawford, Gary Russell. I done been in the ring with world champions already, so I already know what kind of level I'm on. So I knew that, but the world didn't know that, so.
Yeah.
They got to see it.
Yeah, very well said. I like that answer there. And obviously your next fight has been penciled in for July 13th against Franklin Manzanilla. Tell me what you know about this guy, Shakur.
I'm not going to act like I know a lot about it. I don't know too much about him. The most things I know, that dude that was giving Rigondeaux a hard time, his last fight, I guess that dude beat him, the guy I'm fighting.
Yeah.
Beat the dude that was giving Rigo a hard time. That Rigo knocked out.
Yeah, this guy Franklin, I mean, he's got 17 knockouts from 18 wins. Obviously, quite a big puncher there. And he's got 5 losses, but he's only been stopped once, and it was almost 7 years ago. In his very last fight, he actually boxed Ray Vargas for the WBC Super Bantamweight World Title, and he lost on points. But he actually had the champion down in the second round. He was giving him trouble. Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say he was giving him trouble.
Yeah, he had him down in that second round. So yeah, he's probably the biggest puncher you'd have faced thus far in a pro ring, Shakur.
I don't agree with that. I think Chris Diaz was, because the difference between him and Chris Diaz is Chris Diaz was coming down from 130. He's coming up from 122, so I don't agree that he will be the biggest puncher.
Okay.
I thought, but
it's up for debate. Both obviously big punchers, like I say. And after this fight, Shakur, should everything go to plan, do you want a world title fight after this, or would you be more interested in another big fight with a guy that doesn't hold a world title, but, you know, he's up there in people's estimations, a guy like Carl Frampton, even though he's just announced he'll be fighting in early August?
I honestly, I want a world title fight, but I think that Oscar Valdez is moving up to 130, so if anything, I would rather me and Frampton fight for the title. I'm number one in the WBO and I'm number one in the WBA now, so I feel as though it's time for a world title shot after this fight.
Yeah, I was going to say there, obviously the WBA, they put their rankings out the other day, and you've been placed now at number one. Obviously at the minute, the full champion is Leo Santa Cruz, but it's a bit annoying because obviously the politics in boxing, you'd feel probably prevent that fight from happening. So being number one, it's great. It's a great statistic, but that's a fight that probably, unfortunately for boxing fans, won't get made.
Yeah, most definitely, but if they were to make me the mandatory, that fight would definitely be made. So hopefully they make me the mandatory for one of these champions. That way they have no choice but to fight me.
And obviously you mentioned also being number one in the WBO as well. You mentioned there about Oscar Valdez. A fun fighter. He's looking to move up perhaps. That fight, if he didn't move up, you'd imagine would be probably the easiest one to get made out the lot. But I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Shakur? Because a lot of people kind of talk about you and Warrington, you and Frampton, all these other names. Not so much Valdez though, for some reason.
Yeah, if you want my honest opinion, I wasn't gonna say too much about it, but I kind of feel like they don't. I don't know why they don't want to see that fight. Like I feel like me and Valdez would be a big fight in the U.S. and I feel like a lot of people will be tuned into that and. I don't know if it's because he's with Top Rank don't mention it, or ESPN don't mention it, but I don't see a lot of people mentioning it either. I don't understand that, so I'm just as confused about it as you.
They're looking after him. Well. Obviously, Josh Warrington, Shakur. Josh Warrington, he just fought Kid Galahad. I don't know if you saw the fight, but a lot of people felt like Kid Galahad perhaps nicked it. Did you see it at all, to give a fair assessment?
Nah, I ain't really watched too much of the fight. I saw highlights, and it did look like Josh Warrington had a hard time. So I don't really know who won, but I wouldn't mind fighting either of them. But I would love to fight Warrington for his belt. And I wouldn't mind going to England and fighting him either. So
I wish that fight could happen. I mean, I want to ask you, Shakur, honestly. I mean, it's looking like the WBO is the route that is the most obvious one to go down. For a vacant belt, that'd be, again, the easiest route, really. But if it was up to you, if you could literally fight any one of the guys I'm going to mention here, Leo Santa Cruz, Carl Frampton, Josh Warrington, Oscar Valdez, which one would you prefer to fight if it was up to you?
If it was up to me, I would prefer to fight Josh Warrington in England. And the only reason I say that because I feel like that'd be a big fight. I feel like that'd be a fight that'll turn me into the superstar that I want to be. So I feel like that'd be a perfect fight for me.
Yeah, very well said. Very true. Again, we'd love to see you fight over here, Shakur. We really would. And just finally, Shakur, before I let you go, we've kind of gone through things pretty quickly. Have you got any closing words at all just for our listeners before we let you go, my friend?
Oh, yeah. Just tune in July 13th. I'm fighting on ESPN, and I'm ready to put on the show now. So it's against Frank Manzanilla. He's a tough competitor, but it's my time, so I'm ready to show out for my city.
Absolutely. Best of luck, Shakur, for July 13th. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure that we'll talk sometime after.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Ayaz, what you got?
Michael Conlan will face Argentina's Diego Alberto Ruiz, live and exclusive on ESPN, Stateside and BT Sport in the UK on the 3rd of August.
Yeah, obviously it was supposed to be nicotine. Conlan wanted to try and avenge that very controversial loss in the Olympics to him, but he pulled out. So in steps, like you say, Diego Ruiz, the Argentinian fighter, 25 years of age, a record of 21-2. These 2 losses came, to guys that were not very good. He got disqualified against a guy who was 4-4 in 2015, and he lost unanimously over 6 rounds to a guy that was 3-2 with 3 draws back in 2016. So very, very padded record, actually, and obviously it's going to be a spectacular win for Conlan on the night. It's a big step down, to go from nicotine to this guy, but it's not necessarily Conlan's fault.
Carl Frampton will return to the ring on August 10th and face Emmanuel Dominguez in a 12-round fight.
Yeah, Carl Frampton back in action, like we say. It's obviously a drop down in level from the last fight against Josh Warrington. Dominguez, I mean, a record of 26-8 with 2 draws, only been stopped the 2 times, but worryingly, the most recent time he was stopped was actually against Jordan Gill. It was back in March of this year. He stopped him in 3 rounds, didn't he? And I think he also lost by stoppage to Emmanuel Navarrete, if that's the same guy. But anyway, you wouldn't imagine he'd be able to pose any kind of a threat to Carl Frampton. But the one thing is, this guy's 5'9", so Carl Frampton giving away a bit of height there, to say the least. So could be interesting, but I very much doubt it.
And finally, Juan Francisco Estrada has signed with Matchroom Boxing and Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, absolutely. Real breaking news that we got to hear. I think it was the back end of last week now, I believe it was. It's a groundbreaking signing, if we're being honest. I mean, you look at the top 10 pound-for-pound kind of list now, and they're all on the zone. I mean, obviously, Anthony Joshua seems like he's crashed out of that top 10 pound-for-pound list. You've got Canelo on there. You've got Golovkin on there. You know, there's guys up there like Andrade. Who am I missing off that list? You know, obviously, you got people like Daniel Jacobs. Lomachenko not on there yet. Usyk on there now. Who else am I missing? Terence Crawford not on there yet, but you know, a lot of those top 10 guys, especially in terms of the big name guys, they're on the zone. I mean, the 2 biggest names in boxing obviously are Canelo and Joshua. They're both on the zone, but this is a fighter here that is a true pound for pound fighter, Estrada, and you know, it obviously makes fights like the Cal Yafai fight easier to now make. We obviously mentioned Cal Yafai earlier on in the show. Wasn't very impressive, but now that's a door open for him. He could have the big fight here against Estrada, or he could perhaps fight Charlie Edwards, which is what I'd rather see him do. But he's supposed to be fighting on the 24th of August, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's headlining a show in Mexico, so all the best to him, and it's going to be good to see him on Sky Sports, of course.
And that's it for the news.
Thank you very much, Ayaz. Right, moving over now to the preview part of the show. We really are reaching because there's not too much to mention at all. We're going to start here in the Bolton Whites Hotel. This one's tomorrow, Friday. 2 fights to mention over here. No, actually, just the one. Hosea Burton, 23-1. He hasn't boxed since November of last year. You know, since that loss to Frank Buglioni, he's been fighting complete no marks, really. It's a real shame because I really believe in his talent, but he takes on another no mark, unfortunately. Edgars Sniedzi, who's 6-26. Oh boy. Yeah, it's a shame that. I'd like to see Hosea Burton doing a lot more than that. I believe also on that card was supposed to be someone else. Can't remember who it was, but perhaps not. Maybe not. Yeah, moving out now to Germany at the CU Arena in Hamburg. 1 or 2 fights to mention. Firstly, Igor Mikulkin, former opponent of Kovalev, 22-2. He fights for the interim IBO World Light Heavyweight title against Timur Nakarkoev, who's 21-2. It's a decent fight. I mean, I remember Mikulkin. He made a bit of a fan of me because I didn't expect him to put up any kind of threat to Kovalev, and he showed a decent chin up until he got stopped. He hit Kovalev with some good shots. He hasn't actually boxed since September of last year, and the man in the other corner, well, I mean, he hasn't really boxed fantastic opponents. He got stopped in 5 rounds by Avni Yildirim, so you'd have to say probably Mikulkin wins that one, but that should be decent. And topping the bill, actually, home fighter Sebastian Formella, 20-0 with 10 knockouts. He takes on Fulani Mbenge, the South African, 15-0. A real good fighter, Mbenge, obviously travelling here to Germany, so it could be interesting, but I think Mbenge is a guy with a real bright future in that welterweight division, even though it's completely stacked at the minute. But, you know, he's got a good ranking, I think, with some of the world sanctioning bodies and stuff like that. But yeah, Formella, a guy I don't really know too much about. He's 32 years of age, though. I'm not quite sure. Never really heard of him. But he's getting the South African to travel, so that could be interesting there. Moving out now to Kazakhstan at the Barry's Arena. Got to be honest, the undercard isn't up to much, but the main event is for the WBC World Bantamweight title. We've got Nordin Ubali, 15-0, the champion. Obviously, in his last fight, it was the win against Roche Warren. Obviously, those two had a bit of history in the amateurs. Ubali won in the amateurs, and Ubali won unanimously in the pros. And he takes on here in his first defence, 32-3 with one draw, Arthur Villanueva, the guy that we saw take on Zolani Tete back in 2017. He lost to Tete on points in a real boring fight. He also got stopped by Luis Neary in November of 2017. Yeah, it's a decent defence for Ubali, really, I suppose. It's not a great fight. It's not one I'm going to be watching, I don't think. I think it may be on IFL TV, if I'm not mistaken, that one, or Box Nation. It's one of those two. And finally, the final bill to mention here, it takes place at the Stadion Miejski in Poland. We've got Lukas Rozanski, 10-0. He's a heavyweight prospect. He's in a 10-rounder against Izwagbi Ugano. That's the guy who gave a real fight to Dominic Brazil. It was an up-and-down fight. I think they both went down, and then Ugano ended up getting stopped. He's the black guy from Poland. 18-1 is his record. Obviously, that one loss by stoppage to Brazil, but he hasn't done much since then. And this guy, like I say, 10-0. I know he's been sparring Michael Hunter in Poland about a week or so ago, so could be interesting, that fight. But like I say, we've got to bring you something in the preview part of the show, and we really are reaching. Nothing big going on in the States, nothing big going on really in the UK. And that's about everything for the preview part of the show. So just before we wrap up part 2 and ultimately end the show, it is of course time to welcome our second and final guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former 2-time world title challenger, Mr. John Molina Jr. John, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you on, John. So it's the first time you've been on the show. I want to start just by saying that one of the very best fights I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, probably more than that, has to be that fight you had with Lucas Matthysse. What do you remember from that night? It was a complete war. Brilliant fight.
Definitely a great fight. One that I thought we should have done it again, but it was an all-out slugfest. It was my first introduction to 140 pounds. As this next fight will be my first introduction to 147 pounds.
Yeah, and like I say, an epic fight. For anyone that's listening that hasn't seen it, boy oh boy, go and check that one out. And obviously, John, last time you boxed was earlier this year against Omar Figueroa. Omar managed to get the win unanimously, but the fight really could have gone either way. Am I correct in saying that you felt you certainly did enough on the night?
I believe I did enough. I think the boxing experts around the world thought that I had the nod. That I got the nod, but it is what it is, water under the bridge, and we're off to the next.
And talking of the next, that will be against Sergey Lipinets. What do you know about Sergey, John?
Sergey's a tough kid. I've known him since he came over to the States. Very tough, durable, formidable opponent, and he's an ex-world champion for good reason, because he's, again, a tough guy. But I know he's going to come and bring it that night, so it's going to make for another explosive fight, which all my fights seem to always be that way.
And, you know, you mentioned that you've known the guy for quite a while. Obviously, I'm guessing you must have tuned in for his fight against Peterson and probably against Mikey. He's got that kind of come-forward style, Lipinets, but I'm sure that kind of works hand in hand. You want a guy to come to you, and if you land with that right hand, very rarely do people get up from that. I'm sure, you know, the styles gel real good.
Absolutely. I think the powers that be, when they put this fight together, knew exactly what they were doing, and it was going to be a good, a good segue into the Pacquiao Thurman card. And again, I think it's a great fight stylistically. I think he's a tough opponent and ex-world champion for good reason. And I'm looking forward to this fight. Definitely looking forward. I'm not gonna have to go find the guy, to say the least.
And talking of the main event, Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman, another cracking card here. Who do you like, I should say, in the main event? Because it's a real intriguing one. I really like the fight.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's very intriguing. It's a great fight. Everyone's judging off of Thurman, off of his last performance. And what people don't know is that Josecito Lopez is no slouch. This guy is it should be up there with the top tier of the fighters. And for Thurman to pull out the victory, even in the fashion that he did, it speaks volumes of where Thurman's at. I don't think people are giving Thurman the credit because of the way he looked in the last outing. But with that being said, I think Manny Pacquiao, granted he is in his 40s now, he's still going to be a handful, and I think the styles mesh well together. I think Pacquiao's fast, he's going to move, and Thurman is a great boxer, and I think Pacquiao has fast enough feet to keep up with him.
And John, I want to ask you this. I mean, I personally believe that you were at 135 and you had some real tough guys there when you were there. Obviously, you moved up to 140 and you just kind of landed in bad luck with all the guys that was there, especially the likes of Terence Crawford. But I really feel like you were a guy that was certainly good enough to become a world champion. Do you ever kind of feel like you've underachieved, if anything?
You know, being a guy that started boxing at 18 years old, I feel like I've gained a lot of accolades and a lot of respect in the sport, to making my profession, to making my livelihood. And I've given a lot to the sport, and I feel the fans appreciate what I've given to the sport. But I'm not done yet, and I'm not going to say one way or the other about a world title or not a world title. I've won every regional title. I've won every, the international title. I've won the interim title. I'm missing one covenant title, and that's a world title. But with that being said, my job's not done. I got a hell of a fight against Lipinets. And with that being said, I think a victory against someone like Lipinets is going to put me in a great position.
And I also want to ask you this, John. Obviously, you've been around the game now for a long, long time. You've been boxing half your life, a little bit longer perhaps. You won't overlook someone like Lipinets, but have you kind of got in the back of your head anyone at all on your radar that you do want to fight at some stage up at 147? Just before your days are out kind of thing. Is there anyone that you do want to mix it with?
You know, right now, my focus, again, I'm going to give the answer that every fighter that's in his right mind going to give. I have my hands full with Lipinets. I think he's a very tough, formidable opponent.
Yeah.
I want to get past that, and then we can readdress that question after we get the victory July 20th.
Yeah, well said. And I want to ask you this, John. Like I say, you've mixed it with so many good fighters, especially like back-to-back even. You've been in some huge fights. Who would you say is the best fighter that you've ever boxed in a pro ring?
What I'm going to say is going to sound a little, this is my personal experience. I speak for myself. But I think one of the toughest guys I've ever shared the squared circle with, stylistically and athletically, would be Adrian Broner. Believe it or not, he was very difficult to put a finger on him.
No, it's not too surprising. I mean, Crawford, I thought you were going to say, obviously a brilliant fighter, but no.
Yeah, a lot of people would have thought that, but no, Broner's athletic ability when he wants to fight is he's pretty darn good. Now, if he had the focus to go along with his ability, I think he could have done really well for himself.
Okay, fair enough. And I just want to ask you, in terms of training situations, John, are you still with Joe?
No. I'm with Robert Alcazar. I've been with him for the last 2 years. And the funny backstory to this fight is Joe Goosen is now training Sergey Lipinets.
Yes, of course. I should have thought of that. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, what's that going to be like, being in the corner opposite to Joe?
It's all business at the end of the day. And you said it best yourself. I'm a veteran of 13 years as a pro. And there's nothing that anyone can do in that ring that I haven't seen before, whether that be with Joe Goosen or any trainer for that matter. But I respect Joe. I think he's a hell of a trainer, one of the best that I've ever had. And I know he's going to have Sergey in tip-top shape, ready for the fight. So expect fireworks.
We certainly will. And finally, John, I just want to give you an opportunity to send a message out to your supporters here in the UK, because trust me when I say this, the UK fans really do enjoy your style, and a lot of us have stayed up till the early hours of the morning to watch a fight card, and you've made it worth staying up for.
I appreciate that. In the UK, all over the world, I appreciate my fans. I fight for the fans. I'm a kid that comes with the backstory that, again, started boxing at the age of 18. And to make it to this level and to accomplish these accolades, this is how I feed my family. And I want to fight for every one of the hardworking men in the world that get up every day to feed their families. This is why I do what I do and leave it all on the line.
John, listen, I want to wish you the absolute best of luck for July 20th in Vegas. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure that we'll speak again after the fight.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have a good one.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 194 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you to our two guests on this week's show, the 2016 Olympic silver medalist and undefeated featherweight world contender Shakur Stevenson, and the former two-time world title challenger John Molina Jr. I do just want to quickly apologise for the slight echoing on the John Molina Jr. interview. I hope it was still listenable for all of you. The prediction league currently stands at myself in the lead on 7 points. Ayaz is in second place with 6 points, and you, the listeners, are on 5 points. It is very, very close. It's been a very short show this week. Next week's show will also be pretty short, I'd imagine, because there's not really any big-time boxing this weekend or next weekend. But as always, of course, there will be another show for you, even if it just consists mainly of the interviews that we bring each week. You can certainly count on us to deliver. Thank you all for listening to this week's podcast. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and we shall see you all again next week.